her.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be a part of this amazing event. So, I will kick it off by talking about how search is becoming more and more multi-sensory. So, let's kick it off with tangible, audible, and visual. So just you introduced me already. I am Purna. I'm the senior PPC training manager at Microsoft, and I'm a huge search nerd. So I'm very lucky that my job lets me travel all around the world talking about PPC, SEO, and voice search. I also write about these topics on lovely publications such as Search Engine Land, Moz, and Search Engine Watch. So I have a question. Do you guys know that how many of you have a smartphone? Most of you, right, in this room? So my iPhone, I have an iPhone, and it's okay to have an iPhone, even though I work for Microsoft. It's all friendly. But my iPhone has more processing power in it now than all of NASA had when it sent a man to the moon. Like, think about it. Technology is advancing at such rapid paces. You know, my cell phone actually has more processing power now than almost all of the consumer computers that were in existence in 1995, but even more so than in 2005, just 10 years ago. If you think about what huge shifts we're taking in just little periods of 10 years, which brings me to this sort of next point. If we take ourselves back 10 years, and if you imagine you're walking down the street, it's 2006, and you see somebody talking to themselves, what are you going to think? Your first thought is that this person's probably crazy. Bring yourself back 10 years forward, so in the present today, 2016, and if you saw somebody walking down the street talking to themselves, you probably wouldn't even notice them. And if you did, you would just think that, oh, they're probably talking on the phone. These little 10-year shifts in technology are changing not just the actual physical technology, but how we reacted, how we behave, how we understand. So let's start with looking at the three elements. The first one, we'll start with the visual. How many of you have ever interacted with a little map listing? Or have you bought anything off a shopping ad? Or I know we've all done this, right? We've watched those cooking videos on Facebook and convinced ourselves that it's super easy to go and make this like fancy dish in 5 minutes. And unfortunately, the reality never quite measures up. The truth is, in all these studies that were done, this is some stats from Pixelword Design's image research, they found that images are the most important deciding factor when making a purchase. Now, that's pretty major. And it's not surprising because this is think found behavior. We interact with an image if it has relevant, if we interact with content if it has relevant imagery. So let's take a look at some of the future trends that we're seeing. And certainly, when we're thinking about the future of visual, the first thing we think of is things like augmented reality and virtual reality. And yes, that's going to play a part. And it's going to change the way we shop as well. I want to show you this really short video. How cool was that, right? it changes the way you shop. I wish I had that at home, because one of the big issues we have as consumers is trying to figure out how things will look and feel in our house. I am the queen of buying sofas that are far too big for my house, and my husband will be like, I told you that was too big, but it just doesn't look that big in the store or in the really big showroom. So if I had something like this now, it would be a huge improvement. And it's not just in the home sector. For anybody who's a fan of fashion, Rebecca Minkoff is a really interesting brand to look at. At New York Fashion Week this fall, so back in September in New York, she did two really cool things. The first one was she had people download this augmented reality app called Zeekit. And what it did was, as the models were walking down the runway in their perfectly skinny, tiny bodies, making the clothes look amazing, women in the audience could use that augmented reality app to see how the clothes would look on their body. Now, that's absolutely brilliant, right? If you think about the problem that retail has, is that there's a 20 to 40% return rate. That's really huge. Imagine if 40% of all your clients were like, yeah, take your stuff back. That's a lot of money wasted. So if technology can help people try on their clothes and see how they fit and reduce any return rate, it will not only help people save money, but it also builds this long-term brand loyalty. She also tried to sell these VR headsets that you could just put them on and you could feel as if you were in the front row of her fashion shows. So creative. This is a fabulous brand to watch. Another company is Sephora that's really interesting. Now, the reason I want to point this out and bring it up is because what's very interesting about what Sephora has done is that they've tried to harness augmented reality by using technology that you already carry with you. Right? We all have our phones with us all the time. I think if we're ever more than 3 feet away from our phone, we get panic attacks. So you don't need to go and buy a specific VR, AR headset. This is just part of your phone. And it's really clever. So you put the camera on, it looks at your face, and then it just superimposes those eyelashes and different lipstick colors. It's brilliant. You can make yourself, if you're feeling very jet lag, as if I'm doing from re-jet, like I'm really tired, I'm like, okay, let me make sure I look a bit nicer. I'll at least just look at myself in that. And in testing it out, I ended up buying 4 lipsticks. So obviously it's working quite well for them. Finally, just to point out another different trend that we're seeing recently is things like what Pinterest is doing. It's a great way to enhance the discoverability of your product. No longer do we rely on just the photos on your website. Yes, we may put up photos on Pinterest of our products, but what if we want to highlight different types of things? Say if I want to talk about pumpkin soup and I'm trying to get recipe ideas. But if I spot a really lovely kitchen towel, I'm like, oh, that would go so well in my kitchen. I don't have to try to be like, oh, I wonder where they got it from. I can use sort of specific image search that can pinpoint details within a certain image, and then can go and find me things that are quite similar, and I can showroom and showcase my products far more effectively as a brand. Another trend is that where this type of technology can be used is Google bought mood stocks. All I have to do is point at something and take a picture of something I see in a magazine or something that I see on the street. Say I like the shoes somebody's wearing next to me on the train, but I don't want to ask them. I can try to take a photo. Well, not very creepily, right? Be careful. And it will instantly tell me like, okay, these are the shoes. This is the brand. This is where you can buy it. This is how much it costs. So the whole world becomes your showroom. All these are really important to pay attention to, because if we think about it, we're not selling to millennials. The millennials, yes, they're the customers of today, but 5 years from now, or think another 10-year shift, we're going to Gen Z. My son's 10 and he falls snap in the middle of Gen Z. And if you think about it, these kids are growing up today by looking at images. It's a Snapchat world. They're so used to this. So they communicate with images. So the whole visual element is going to be hugely, hugely important. So what should you do? Try to think about what's a good strategy for your brand. How can you use images? Is it augmented reality? Is it just more detailed images? And then try to come up with a way to have better images on your site, really high quality ones, and follow all your best practices. For those SEO best practices for images that we've talked about for more than 10 years now. Make sure you have a really good file name, your title tag, your captions, all of that. Follow it. Let's talk about the tangible, the things that we still use our thumbs to press buttons for. Let me ask you guys this. Do you think text messaging is smart? A lot of people say, no, text messaging, that's not a very smart thing. It's normal. It's on my phone. It's an SMS. But where it gets really smart is the number of people that actually use it. Just take a look at the active monthly users that are on these chat apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and WeChat. They have far more users than the social media apps like Instagram or Twitter. But what's really, really interesting to me is look at where they all started. These have started so recently and they're already so popular. These are like the babies of the technology age and they're already so powerful. So I'm really excited to see what they do when they grow up. And they are going to grow up quite quickly because just look at the user base. There's 2.5 billion people using these messaging apps now. Chances are your grandmother may not have a Facebook account, but she is definitely having an SMS or some kind of messaging app. We all use it. And what's more important is think about how quickly you respond to an SMS. If you get a text, you're probably going to check it within the first 5 minutes that you receive it, and you're more likely to respond as soon as possible, unless you want to ghost somebody, and that's a different story. But let's look at the usage rates. It's predicted to grow to 3.6 billion users next year. That's more than India and China put together. It's huge number of users. And we can already see that they're being used really well for e-commerce. WeChat's a really good example in China. Now, I know that the internet is slightly more restricted there. So a free chat service that lets you take different actions all the time works quite well. Some of the top uses of WeChat tends to be to access products and services. So I would argue that it's not just a chatting platform, it's an e-commerce platform that has chat capabilities. And we already see these kinds of chats being used in the West here as well. For example, going back to Sephora, they have a chat bot. So you can chat with a robot and you can take a little quiz that'll know you better, and it will say that, hey, can I give you some makeup tips, or do you want to check out product reviews? And you can just have this little on-demand chat message like, yeah, I want to get some tips for my face and I want to learn how to do contouring, and she'll go and send you these tips. Now, why is Sephora doing this? It's great customer relationship management, right? It's also a really good sales tool. If there's no human or time element that goes into sort of managing this on a day-to-day, we're just chatting with a robot. I could get all these tips. The tips will mention specific products. I would be convinced to buy these products probably. So really great in terms of lifetime value for the customers. And it's not just that. Bing, we see this as well. Yes, search is really important, but rather than looking for flights to New York just on your typical SERP, so your search box, you would go suddenly to the Skyscanner bot within Skype, and that still has the backend powered by the search, by Bing search. But now I can just engage with the chat, and it's more conversational. It's helpful. So search is just going more and more outside of the search box, which is so interesting to see. It still powers everything. It's still the backbone of everything that we do. We're just engaging with search in more friendly, personalized ways. And to that, people have said that by 2020, customers will manage 85% of their relationship with the enterprise without interacting with a human. Now, at first, that stat was a little bit like crazy, like, no way, how can that be? But if we just take a look at these examples now, we're seeing that these bots are getting really smart. They have this capabilities now to understand emotion, to talk through natural language, to translate things live for you. They are better than a human. And these bots just sit there like a genie in the bottle. Every time you want them, you just rub your lamp, the genie comes out, helps you, and then it goes away. It doesn't bother you, it doesn't need anything else. It's just there ready to serve you when you need it. So that's a very good reason why I think we're going to start engaging with bots a lot more. So, what should you do? Try to think of adding in some type of more conversational and human engagement elements that can be taken over by the bots. Can you add more of these? If you have a live chat functionality, can you make it more detailed with smarter chatbots that are powered by AI? These chatbots are surprisingly very easy to build. If you went to something like Microsoft Bot Framework, for example, you could go in and just kick off setting up your own chatbot in a matter of minutes. And then, of course, you can start to get it to be more and more advanced. And that's when you want to think about it as how advanced do they need to be? If you're a bank ATM, then maybe your chatbot needs to be pretty functional. Doesn't need to have a huge personality. But if you want to be maybe a personal shopper, sort of what who's doing that? Watson is doing that with North Face, and it's so interesting. You want to try to have a bit more of a personality and banter back and forth, so people want to keep using you. Finally, we can't talk about the future without talking about voice and the audible, and when we actually have to talk to our devices. And yes, it's more than voice search, right? It's voice-based actions, it's voice-based reminders, or these different conversations that we have with our machines to help make our lives more productive and more effective and smooth. So let's see, when do we find that people tend to be using voice search? Is really when you're typing, when you can't type. So say you're driving, that's really a very high use. If you're looking for just a quick answer, you may be cooking something and you're like, hey, Dad, did I need 2 cups of sugar or was it 1.5? And you can just get a quick answer. Or you're walking around, especially if you're local, and say, hey, what time does my bank close today? Those are good ones. If you're otherwise occupied, you might be second screening. We see this happen quite often with voice search. You tend to be second screening, doing something else. You may be watching a football match and you're like, oh, wait, did Arsenal win this match back 10 years ago or not? Who did that? And also another very important use is if you have scissors instead of fingers, then you don't have any choice but to use voice search. And I can't walk around anywhere without being hit on the head with some type of voice control device. My remote control at home has voice control. If you drive around in your car, I mean, I don't have a fancy BMW, unfortunately, but again, my car still has vocal. I can be like, hey, call this person. Or if you have drag and drive messaging, you can dictate your text messages if you're driving around. Or my favorite one, that is for, makes lazy people around the world rejoice, is your voice controlled hotel room. Aloft Hotels have partnered with Siri so that you can just stay in bed and be like, turn on the light, turn off the light, make the temperature warmer, go here, and see where should I go for breakfast. It's so fun. It makes us really easy and lazy, but it makes sense why we do this. It's not just because we're lazy. If we try to look at how many words per minute we can speak versus type, it's about 38 to 40 words typing. And in speaking, it's about 110 to 150 words per minute while speaking. If I'm yelling at my husband, it's 500 words per minute. But hey, that's neither here nor there. But this makes sense. Our world is becoming more and more controlled with voice. Every single thing, technology that we have, we can almost control it. We can say, hey, turn off the lights, hey, turn down the temperature, all of these things with voice. And that makes sense. We'll get used to it. And it'll almost reach the point where Comscore has predicted that by 2020, 50% of search will come from voice. And that doesn't mean that desktop is going to die or anything is going to die. It's just going to be more searches. So the volume of searches is going to go up to the point where half of all search is going to come from voice. And yes, a small part of our regular activities will get cannibalized by voice, but only because it's more efficient and it's easier and it makes more sense. And the one way that voice is quite helpful for us as advertisers is that we tend to use more intent words with voice search. And the type of question and natural language and the full sentence that we use will give us the intent much there. It's like, hey, which is the cheapest digital camera that is waterproof? Just in that one sentence, I know that people are looking not just for a regular camera, they're looking for one that's waterproof and they're also price sensitive. So I got these two additional cues. And in an interview that Eric Enger did with Gary Ilyesh from Google, Gary had mentioned that searches on mobile devices are 30 times more likely to take immediate action around them. And we've seen that with our queries too. For example, I looked at one of our top travel clients and I looked at their top 20 queries on desktop and tablets. And they tended to be just research based words like flights to hotels in blah, blah. Then I looked at the top 20 mobile queries for the same company. And they were very different. They were all people trying to look for things to do in the city they were in right now. So the best Italian restaurant for dinner, the best tour of the Duomo, anything like that that makes sense. It was around them and near. And voice is just going to play that up that as much because we tend to use voice in our mobile devices while we're on the go. So a good tip to think about is to see how and where you show up. Right? If I'm looking for the best Italian restaurants in Milan, Cortana is going to understand that Purna is looking for Italian restaurants in Milan that have good reviews. So she's going to show me a list of restaurants. And what's interesting is that I may not want to click on any of these websites. So, like Rand Fishkin's been a big person to talk about this trend where people are going to the SERPs, but they don't click beyond the SERPs. I think we're going to continue to see that with these sort of local listings here. People just want to know the phone number, the address, where is it, and also the reviews. A good tip is to look at where that particular business is taking their reviews from. So Cortana in Europe is pulling from TripAdvisor, for example. In the US, if I'm looking for a US restaurant, she'll tend to pull from Yelp. So if I want to prioritize improving my reviews or doing any kind of reputation management, I would want to look at where the digital assistant is pulling them from. So that would make a good place for me to go and tailor that first. So if I had to think of a 3-step checklist for you to look at with voice search, or just to get your sort of toes wet, is analyze your search terms report or your search query report, either within Search Console or get from your PPC teams. Look at what people are using voice search for you now, if at all. Based on that information, based on the intent that you're really seeing, you want to try to see if you can revisit maybe some of your targeting strategy. Should I do more local? Should I do more more kind of citations? Should I do more kind of like videos to answer questions? And that's when you can get very creative about the creative. So you can look at the right ads if you're running PPC ads, the right landing page, just to help people get the action that they want as quickly as possible. So it's all these trends now are just a sign for what's to come. Like if you had to think about your cell phone 10 years ago, you still were happy with it, right? All it did was make calls, but you thought it was fantastic. And now we're at this point where we're at the stage where all our technology is like a cell phone that can only make calls. It's great, we love it, but it's going to become so much better. It's going to become so much stronger and can do a lot more for us. I want to show you one last video, and that will just show you a sign of things to come. Okay, how cool was that? Did you see how it tended to use all the different things we talked about? It used the visual search where she took a photo of something in a magazine. It used the chat bots where she talked to Cortana and Cortana talked to the bot of the store. And in less than 60 seconds, she saw something in a magazine and it was being shipped to her. And it was so easy. And it understood her. It made personalized recommendations. She landed in Vegas and said, hey, you might be wanting to do this instead. So it's so smart. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for what these things are going to be able to do. And of course, the first reaction when I share this video to people sometimes is, oh my God, that's terrifying. And you know what? What's happening is that we just need to keep calm and realize that all the technology is taking baby steps. We can be so much in charge of what the future is going to be like. It's only going to be what we're willing to accept and what we're willing to engage with. So, and we're not even the target audience, which is interesting. It's more Gen Z. So like 5 or 10 years from now, they're the audience. So what are they willing to accept? And just to think about the small baby steps that are happening now that you may not even realize. If you have an iPhone, if you have the latest iOS 10 software, you can notice that you can tell Siri to go and engage with other apps for you. So you can say that, hey, send $100 to Alex for me for dinner yesterday using Venmo. So Siri will talk to Venmo and send the money. Of course, you still have to put in your password and authorize, but she has the power to already start talking to these other apps. So it's little baby steps that are happening already now. So that's why when I say your future, the future is right now. If you have any questions, I love chatting about this all the time. Use your voice. Let's chat at Twitter or add me on LinkedIn at any time. Just add Purna Virji on Twitter. But otherwise, thank you.